In the middle of the Indian Ocean lies a string of islands, most of which rise barely a metre above the water. This is the Maldives, a haven for a huge variety of marine life, and particularly for corals. The Maldives archipelago is made up of almost 1,500 islands, and although most of these differ in shape and size, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they are surrounded by coral reefs. The Maldives, like so many other countries around the world, relies on its coral reefs for its survival.
I'm here in front of what could be considered one of the most important animals on the planet. But incredibly, most people don't even know that these are animals. And although coral reefs cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, about 25% of all marine species rely on coral reefs like this for their survival.
My name is Coco, and I'm the coral tank technician working here as part of the MUI team. Unfortunately, I have witnessed the 2016 coral bleaching event as being a part of a dive master here in the Maldives. And I have to say, it's one of the most devastating things I have seen here as a Maldivian. We are known for our beautiful coral reefs and our healthy ecosystems we have around the atoll. To see our ecosystems falling apart and our reef fish not having a place to call its home, I felt like I have to do something as a person. And I've been doing coral restoration since 2016. Doing this is just such a big step into restoring these reefs once again and creating a hope to our reefs again as well.
Corals, although they are animals, they actually rely on a tiny plant-like organism called zooxanthellae. These plant-like organisms live inside the tissues of the coral and photosynthesize. This provides the coral with about 80% of their food, and they also give the corals their bright and beautiful colours. However, when water temperatures get too hot, these plant-like cells cannot photosynthesize anymore, and therefore no longer provide the coral with any food. So the corals kick them out of their tissue. This causes the coral to turn white. This is known as coral bleaching. Without their primary food source, bleached corals are highly stressed, will not grow, and are likely to die. With global sea temperatures rising all around the world, every year, many corals are under increasing threats from coral bleaching. None more so than the shallow water corals here in the Maldives.
Without oceans under ever-increasing pressures from climate change and the biodiversity crisis, it's more important than ever that we protect unique habitats like coral reefs. And this is what the Maldives Underwater Initiative team here in Laamu are trying to protect.
So reefs worldwide are under threat from climate change, and here in Laamu, just like everywhere else in the world, we are seeing that effect. So we're trying to understand how coral reefs are able to recover, and this is by looking at how corals are able to reproduce. So corals are able to reproduce both sexually and asexually. So we are trying to understand the coral spawning patterns when they released their gametes into the water to try and see if we can use that in our restoration efforts. So we're collaborating with many researchers from around the world, and including here in the Maldives, and trying to make a process called larval restoration work here in the Maldives. So to start off with, for larval restoration, you need to have an understanding of when corals actually spawn. And to do this, we do a process called coral cracking. So we have a permit to sample a small section of the coral colony, and you can actually see the eggs developing inside the corals. And then with that, we can gain an understanding about which month they're likely to spawn in, and then which day they're likely to spawn on. So we've been collecting data on that project for over 2 years now. And so with that understanding, we're able to do night dives and actually observe that spawning.
So we're here back on the house reef. Now the sun's gone down and we're looking out for signs of spawning after sunset. This is called setting. This is when the coral polyp is preparing to spawn and physically holds the egg in its mouth before it releases synchronously across the whole reef.
So the majority of corals are broadcast spawners, which means they release their eggs and sperm into the water. And it tends to be at night, and we focus our research on the 7 days following full moon. And so we'll be in the water from sunset, and then we'll look for any signs of that egg release into the water.
Ah, look, we've got one here. This coral has started setting. We can see those small pink eggs in each of the polyps. This is a sign that this coral is going to spawn imminently. Spawning events like the one we are going to get tonight are essential for the growth and the development of coral reefs.
The MUI team are quick to set up the equipment to collect the sperm and eggs from these setting corals, and luckily they work quickly. We don't have to wait long before magic starts to happen.
Spawning events like this one are vital to the growth and recovery of reefs, particularly ones that have been damaged by events such as bleaching. This is the opportunity for corals to naturally replenish and grow, start anew. This is stunning. Many of the corals here tonight have spawned. These eggs and sperm bundles will float to the surface where they're naturally fertilized.
Although some of the sperm and eggs will fertilize here in the ocean and go on to settle, the MUI team can massively increase the success rate through collecting them up and looking after them in this very vulnerable stage of life.
In here we have a mixture of both bundles of eggs and sperm. Where it started to break apart, we're starting to see just the eggs and then that slightly cloudy water with the sperm. We mix them together, so all the different colonies, and then fertilize between the different colonies.
So larval restoration, if you compare it to some other restoration techniques, essentially maximizes the genetic diversity of the offspring. Because it's enhancing the natural sexual reproduction of the corals, you're maintaining genetic diversity within the population that is produced. So with this project, the long-term goal is to work with our collaborators and try and develop the process of larval restoration for use here in Maldives.
It's been almost an hour now since we have mixed the embryos in together, and we are looking for signs of fertilization. So when these gametes start to be fertilized, we see the first initial stage we call the bud phase, and where the cell starts to divide into two. And hopefully we'll get to see some now. Yes, we have seen the first signs of fertilization, and you can see just over here. This is the first signs of fertilization you're seeing at the moment, where the cells started dividing into two.
So yeah, it's great that we've got fertilization and it looks really good. So that means that we've got enough different colonies of the same species. And moving on from here is we now move into the rearing phase.
Once the MUI team know they have successfully fertilized eggs, the next stage is making sure those tiny embryos survive.
We have come back to our laboratory and want to check on the eggs and put them under the microscope and see their development to an embryo. So if you look at this one over here, you'll see it's actually going through the second stage of cell division, where it's actually broke off into not only to 2 cells but into 4 cells at the moment, and they will keep on dividing and dividing until they become a prawn chip phase after. Right next to me we have our coral rearing system, and this is a system where we have multiple larval pools on the top and the bottom of the tank, where we have all the embryos. These larval pools are basically a place where the eggs are kept in for the next 3 to 4 days time, and once that turn into a free-swimming larvae stage, we put the settling material down onto the pools, so when these larvae will come down and attach onto the settlement tiles and then grow into a baby coral after a few weeks' time. So one of the biggest benefits of having these rearing pools here is that these eggs can be actually a big food source, and they're eaten by a lot of the fish, and the chances of them actually surviving in our reefs and in our seas are very low. So when we have these pools here, the chances of them actually surviving are really high. We are removing a lot of threats, including fish predation and the chances of them to get swept into the main ocean with our strong currents we have here in the Maldives. I love working on this project because that I get to see all these baby corals growing from an embryo to an adult colony in a few years' time, and to see how beautiful the growth is in first hand.
Corals are notoriously slow growing, so we visit the MUI team later to see how these little IVF babies are getting on.
So at this stage, the coral larvae will be kind of their swimming stage, so they'll be looking for somewhere to settle down. And so they'll be searching for those limestone tiles, which we have preconditioned with calcium carbonate algae on, and they'll be going over those tiles and trying to find somewhere to settle. Once we have the settlers down on the tiles, we'll then be raising them in this safe environment for approximately 2 years. So this allows them to grow where there's no predators and where there's no competition from algae as well, and make sure they have a safe start to their life. By having them in this controlled environment where we can control the temperature, it means they're not susceptible to that marine heat wave. And so we'll place them back out onto the reef where they can start to repopulate that area. This project is really important to try and develop methods of restoration within Laamu. It's trying to help the reefs which have been badly affected by previous bleaching events and may be affected by future bleaching events, in the hope that we can preserve that ecosystem function. So we have hundreds of recruits in this tank, and so when we plant them back out onto the reef, it's hopefully going to give that reef a little bit of a boost in recruitment.
It is clear that the oceans, and particularly corals, have a lot of challenges in the face of climate change. But with projects like this one at Six Senses Laamu, here at least, the corals are being given the best chance possible to survive.